Hello, listening audience, and thank you once again for coming to another Andrew Joseph PR curated webinar. Today, we're talking about the daringness of starting a business during a pandemic. It's very interesting from a sociological and psychological perspective to see how people have reacted to these unprecedented times we're living through. Some people have flourished and some people have floundered. I remember very tone-deaf messages coming from the White House about try something new. What's really different about this conversation is these are real business leaders that really have accomplished trying something new. I'll leave it over to the panel. Thank you for tuning in, and we'll start with Jake. Everyone will tell you about their new business, and the conversation will go from there. Thank you again, and have a wonderful Thursday.
Andrew, thank you so much for the introduction. My name's Jake. I'm the fourth generation CEO of Newell and Newell Props, and I'm also the CEO of this new rental marketplace company called One Rent Place. This is something that we just started during COVID, and it's really exciting to just see how my existing business with Newell has evolved and how we've been able to grow throughout this pandemic, and then also just being able to start a business and really enhance a whole industry during this time, and bringing things together, I think has never been more important. And being able to test this out and sign on dealers and getting this great early response has been wonderful. And we're planning on launching the 1st of February. Are we just doing so really with everything with regards to with Newell, we definitely felt the shutdown. Our whole rental business completely just stopped. There wasn't really any movies or television shows being filmed, but it kind of allowed us to refocus and really kind of, in a way, get back to some of our roots with regards to selling inventory. And we put a tremendous amount of effort into our digital, marketing campaign and our website, and being able to just search, for the inventory. And we've seen a huge increase in our sales by this kind of refocus into our sales side. Obviously, so much is being done online, and really kind of taking a lot of things that we already knew and just really putting that overall focus has really had a tremendous effect to allow us to not only deal with the pandemic, but allow us to grow.
Hey everyone, I'm KD Reid. So just a little bit about myself. I didn't have this traditional route into interior design. So my background is in therapy. I provided like mental health counseling for about like 8 years. During that time, I had a former business, and it was by the name of Cocoon Designs. And in that, I had different parallels. I did like event planning, I played around with interior decorating, did a little selling of products. And I really didn't know what capacity I really wanted to do it in. So during the pandemic, it really allowed me to be at home to really just rethink and really think about the future. And that's when I formulated KD Reid. That's where I really wanted to focus on interior design. And a lot of that really was propelled to a lot of the e-design. So still implementing a lot of the traditional elements of design, but really taking control and grasp over the e-design services that has really like catapulted over the last few months with the services and just different things I'm able to implement to my clients in the market.
Hi everyone, I'm Andrea Hysmith, owner of ASH Interiors and Design. We've actually been around for, oh my gosh, a good decade now, but I've been a designer since 1999. And I always had this idea of having a kind of boutique experience, a studio space. And, prior to the pandemic, meet with clients in person, go to various showrooms, pick out materials at different spaces. And obviously, pandemic happens, businesses shut down, and or clients are feeling a little bit more cautious, which they should for sure. And so the idea of actually committing to the studio space and making that happen became a reality this summer. And what we use this space for is really for a boutique experience. Design is already personalized, it's already personal to the client. So we use this space to meet with the client, I bring the selections in here, we go over the design here, we definitely have the space kind of laid out where we can have social distancing, I can have different products in here and we can really talk about it. And it takes it to the next level of, doing the Zooms, which we all are doing. But then when it's time to finalize, instead of having to drag the client all around different spaces and go into different showrooms where you don't know if they're clean, you don't know if they're safe, you don't know if they're crowded, the client comes here and we just, do that in the comfort of the studio environment. So, the one thing that I think all of us can agree on, and just like Andrew said, we had to, if we were going to stay in this industry, how can we diversify and how can we really utilize our skill set? And that's what I, just like KD Reid said, I sat for a little bit and had to really assess and decide how I was going to pivot to handle this change in our climate.
My name is Aaron Smyle. My wife and I, my wife Ana Claudia, we started a boutique gallery. The gallery is called The Beck. The Beck houses both of our individual businesses. I'm an accountant. We have offices in the Hudson Valley in the Beck, and we also have offices in New York City. Ana Claudia is an interior designer. What we started the Beck previous to the pandemic starting. So we were kind of, after it had started, making arrangements, making sure that we could still achieve what our goal was with the business. I think that this has given everybody a real opportunity to kind of take inventory of what they have, of what they're doing, of what they're passionate about. If you were previously in a business, you weren't happy, it wasn't working, the pandemic may have created a certain stop for everybody. But now you can actually focus on what is important to you and what you do want to do. A lot of our clients, what we're talking about is actually being realistic with possibly starting a new endeavor. I started on my own. I left a bigger firm, started my own company. It's nerve-wracking, it's scary, it's extremely rewarding. Ana Claudia did the same thing. We both work for ourselves, and it's not an easy thing to do. And the pandemic itself also makes it more difficult, but it doesn't make it impossible. The key about being honest with yourself and what you're doing, if you're looking to start a new business, some of our clients are restaurants. I wouldn't recommend opening up a new brick and mortar restaurant right now, but a food truck may make a lot of sense. There are other industries that may make a lot of sense. I'll let Ana Claudia speak more eloquently than I can about it, but the interior design business that she's doing has flourished. There was an interesting quote that I just recently read. You never change things by fighting the existing reality. To change something, build a new model that makes the existing model obsolete. And I think everybody right now is living in that new model. We have no choice. This is, if you will, the cards that have been dealt. And we all now have that opportunity to either take that leap, take that risk, and create something new for ourselves that's rewarding for both us and for our customers.
Hi, I'm Ana Claudia, Aaron's wife, and as he stated, we actually share an office in Rhinebeck, New York. It actually houses our design gallery, and we call it the Beck because it is in Rhinebeck, and it also focuses on the local community. Before talking about the Beck and so forth, I just wanted to take a step back, and I just realized this. I shifted my career in 2008. So I was working in the architecture industry, and there was a lot of layoffs in architecture, and a lot of construction had stopped because the economy had tanked. And I found it like the perfect opportunity to get out of Miami, where I was living and working at the time. Some people would think, why would you Miami? But it just wasn't for me. And that's when I decided to move to New York City. And I, put seeds in a few different places and tried a few different things out to only realize that I wanted to do interior design and not to shy away from it. So, this situation, albeit a lot more complex than the economic situation of 2008, it's difficult, but it's also a good time to kind of take a step back and really reevaluate what you want to do in your life, and don't expect answers right now. It's just a stepping stone. So Aaron was stating that, he has his business, I have my business. We both were primarily, most of our clients were, and, in some aspects for Aaron, still lives in the city. I was commuting to the city a couple of times a week. And we had a small office that we shared here in Rhinebeck, but it was an office that I would have a lot of clients come to. It was quite comfortable, but it was nothing like what we have here. And when the pandemic began, I thought my business was going to tank and go downhill, because my experience in 2008 was that interiors and architecture did not do well. So I didn't completely stressed out. I just watched a lot of Zoom meetings and like business based webinars, and read a lot, and kind of also tried to refresh my creative insights and tried to start looking at inspirations more and reading books and so forth. So I took a step back when I noticed that there was still interest in interiors more than ever. And I started getting more interest from people in the Hudson Valley community versus the city, because they were leaving the city. We thought it was a good time for us to get a larger space here in Rhinebeck. And in addition to that, I kept an eye out for something that had like a storefront, because my thoughts were, if we're gonna have a larger space, we also wanted to make it more visible, because there's a lot of like people walking in this area, especially in the summertime and so forth. It has this tiny, tiny little small town, like downtown area, and people come for the weekends and so forth. But if we got a storefront, I wanted to showcase local makers. So that's what we did. We were fortunate enough to acquire a space that gave us both, our office spaces and somewhat of a design showroom within my office. Just like as Andrea was talking about, like, bringing people here to show them samples and so forth is a lot better and more comfortable for them, because you're meeting with them often anyways, than going to 2 hours away to the city and being like, let's go to a few showrooms and so forth. But also, we have works of furniture and accessories from local makers here. So if a client is wondering whether a $5,000, dining table or desk is worth it by a certain carpenter that we are referring them to, they can come and check out the work that our carpenters, furniture makers have done in our office and so forth. So I'll continue and talk about a little bit of what I project maybe in the near future. I mean, it's not for certain. It's not something that, anybody in economics has told me, like, this is what's going to happen. But I feel like the economy is going to suffer a little bit more. Even with the new administration, it's only natural when people haven't gone to, well, you know, we're very, very lucky that we have the opportunity to revive our careers and so forth, or expand our jobs and so forth. But there's a lot of people who don't have that sort of ability. So I feel like, and also with the second wave and third wave of COVID happening and so forth, I feel like the economy might suffer a little bit more. So I didn't think of this when we first started the BEC, but I do think that a good way to us, in a micro sort of way, to help the economy is to showcase and focus on the local industry, to make sure that the people that you're surrounded by, the makers that you like to refer people to and so forth, will keep their head above water and flourish during this time. And then they'll spend money within your community as well. So, you know, given that, like, I think, you know, more promotion for local makers and so forth is a great attribute. Especially since we've noticed that a lot of online commerce has, you know, gone through the roof. A lot of people have made a lot of money through COVID. Then how about we help the local community, small business, just like ourselves?
I agree with you, Ana Claudia. I'm doing the same thing. You know, here in Ellicott City, there's lots of little, you know, craftsmen. There's a woodworker down the street. And so, you know, I've ordered products from them. So I agree with you. I think that, you know, we actually are very fortunate to be in this creative field, and this field where we can work from home. We can still, if we're, you know, being creative and figure out ways to support others, our peers, but also finding ways to help clients, because I'm sure you've seen this. I thought the same thing. I was like, oh, great, because I was in 2008 too, and I was like, okay, so how am I going to do kitchens and bathrooms, and people aren't going to want contractors in their house? And then after about a month of people being at home, they were like, I need an office space. I need a basement. I need, you know, kids' classrooms. So I think what's important, you know, even if you're not in this field, is really taking a step back, like we said before, and assessing, you know, what am I doing now? Is there something that I can make better? Just like Aaron, his quote, I have to find out where your quote was, but, you know, how can I make this better? Is there something that you notice because you're at home and you realize, like, you know what, my job would be easier or be more efficient if I did this? So I really challenge everyone, you know, to think about how they can make a change, because, you know, everyone says the new normal, you know, this might be the new normal. So how do we adjust versus always saying, oh my gosh, I can't wait till it goes back, because it may not go back.
I think you hit the nail on the head. You know, I think it's really important to really look at your whole business and just look at what's bringing in money. How can you make, you know, how can you help your customers better? How can you bring in different revenue streams? I mean, that's what, you know, I'm trying to really do, you know, with One Run Place. And this is why we're signing on a lot of dealers, is that a lot of people have this inventory and they're just not, you know, there's a whole nother revenue stream that they could be doing to really, you know, that will make a huge difference, the same way it kind of did with Newell. I kind of always looked at Newell being a case study, and, you know, having this, you know, thing where, you know, where we've been able to generate certain things, like, you know, there might be an economic downturn, but, you know, when you're renting to movies and television shows and, you know, they don't really feel the economic downturn. You know, the entertainment industry has never been bigger. You know, I think more people have never been more glued to their television shows since COVID. And so, you know, even though that the whole industry kind of shut down, you know, I thought about how can I make this industry better. I was like, I talk to my customers all the time, being like, how difficult it is for you to source. And that was their number one thing that they had. It's like, they don't know where to find this inventory. The whole, you know, finding rental inventory is very archaic. It's like typing into Google, rent a chair, and then getting a bunch of websites to kind of be there. And there's really no, you know, secure place to do it. And I was like, well, that doesn't make sense. You know, how can I actually build a community, help small businesses generate this whole nother revenue stream, and really kind of bring everything together? and support, you know, a whole industry that I feel like hasn't really gotten it, you know, and so and I think that it gets involved with, you know, going into the staging market. You know, there's always this so many different ways that you can look at a piece of furniture or look at your business plan or your model and then be like, well, how can I make this better? Or if there's something else where I can add something, you know, it's great to be an interior designer, but now, you know, you have all these collections of all these great makers that you do things. And that's like another way of bringing money into your business by selling these products. And it's a natural complement to your business overall, you know, and it's great that, you know, you have a whole accounting practice, you know, with it too. I mean, that's an ultimate compliment, you know, to the things that we know that any good business, you know, the finances always have to be in order. And I think that, you know, to take two kind of polar opposite companies in that and being able to mix it together, there's just natural benefits that's going to allow you to kind of have this consistent, it's going to make things more consistent when you have different kind of streams and you're able to improve different aspects of the industry or the business and really apply to your own business.
Well, go ahead, KD, sorry.
One of the things that I hear between everyone is like collaboration. A lot of collaboration between like the smaller brands and yourself. And one of the things that I noticed that with myself, with being a smaller, newer person, you have to bring in more than one stream of income. And that's one of the things that I've done with is partner with some of the smaller brands in the New Jersey area, in the Chelsea, Soho area. And as Jake said, like they're sitting on these inventory. They really don't know how to present it. They're really not sure how to highlight certain pieces. So that's something that I've been doing is working with in collaboration with some of the smaller brands, just so that way it can help me space for me to present my clients a better product rather than working with some of the bigger brands. I think sometimes you just get lost as just being a regular consumer, but you get to really build that relationship, and then it works out on both ends.
Yeah, I think the common thread with what all of us do, even though we're not necessarily in the same industry, we're all in the customer service industry. And without the customer, there is no business. And we need to listen to what our customers are saying and provide a solution. I mean, if you want to make money, solve a problem for somebody else. Don't necessarily solve the problem for yourself. So in, again, kind of analyzing what new business to start, what new industry to enter into, specifically during a pandemic, what problem can you solve? Where is there a shortage in what you're doing? You know, maybe there is benefit in being a small provider as opposed to being a large firm. You can be more nimble, you can adapt more quickly, you can adjust kind of what you're doing and go on the fly. And I think that the customer also wants to be able to work with someone that has that human element. You know, I think being in a customer service industry, authenticity is one of the biggest keys that there is. You can't fake it. And I think that the client really picks up on that authenticity when they're dealing with a professional. They know when they're being sold a bill of goods. They know when they're being upcharged. They know when the person that is talking to them really has the seller's best interests instead of the buyer's best interests. So combining all of this, you know, again, I think can almost regardless of what industry you do or what you try to do, having that backbone will really set you up for success.
And, you know, Katie, you said about collaboration, and I think it's even more than just with the vendors, but I even think collaborating with peers. You know, I have some designers that I'm very close to, we have great relationships with, and you know, they, like my specialty is more in the kitchen and bath arena. I do interior design, but generally I like to stay kind of in the kitchen and bath unless it's, you know, an adjacent space. But sometimes, you know, you get a project or a lead and I will say, you know what, and I'll call one of my design peers and I'll say, you know, Catherine, you know, are you interested? This customer, they're actually, you know, 15 minutes from your house, they're an hour from me, you know, we can do a meeting together and I can kind of do a nice transition and say, hey, this is one of my design partners. So, I think it's important to also do that, especially, during this time where everyone is trying to just, make it through the other side. I feel like, if you can have partnerships, even in different areas, we get leads from different states. And I'll often, call people I know and say, hey, this is a virtual client, but they are they're in Philly. Would you be interested? I can work with them virtually, or we can collaborate. But, I think that key word is collaboration, and that's from the vendor standpoint to even working together.
Collaboration is key. I'm seeing it right now with, what we're trying to build this community with all these great dealers. Like, I'm really trying to, and artists and galleries. It's like, I think there's just so much better to have like a collective voice, I'm going through every single, dealer's inventory, and I'm giving them like my suggested rental prices. I'm giving them all kind of like the tools to like what I've learned over these past 5 years. Not because I don't want to hide anything from them, because I want to make them better. And I know that there's plenty to go around. And if there's something where, I can add a 10% to their bottom line, on a year. I don't really think there's anything better than that. And I don't think it's really going to have any really negative effects, along with it. I think the design industry in a whole is something that, is I feel like is always, it's never been as strong as it's been now, just because I think so many people have never been more focused on their home, just due to COVID. And I think out of a lot of the industries, it's probably, it's definitely been affected, negatively, but in the grand scheme of things, I think it's, definitely had the best rebound compared to a lot of different things, as I just think that there's just such a more of a importance of it, along with, I just think that, there's more rooms now. People are moving more into homes than they are into apartments. So it's like, there's a lot more rooms to put furniture and art in. So it's nice, and more bathrooms and more rooms to design.
To kind of bring together what Katie said and Aaron said about collaboration, but also doing what's right for the client and et cetera. Like, when I first started, I took every job that I could. I didn't know how to say no, and my rate wasn't great. So I had to juggle a lot of jobs, to stay afloat and so forth. The great thing right now is that, like, I am lucky enough to have had a home in Hudson Valley before it became something popular to do. But there are people and clients and potential clients in the city or who move to other states. And because I'm busy, I'm able to refer those clients out to other peers. And so it's really great. Like I'm in a position to be able to be like, I have some network groups, for interior design and so forth. And then I just, like, even yesterday, I shot an email to one of my networking groups, and I was like, look, an old client of mine from Dumbo, Brooklyn, moved to Charlotte, but I'm not equipped to do virtual because I didn't have to equip myself to do virtual. For the most part, it's very tech savvy what I do. There is a lot of communication via email and a lot of Zoom calls, but I'm not completely virtual. Like I my business personally, like I have a lot to do with scale and proportions. I wouldn't even take like an architect's floor plan. Like I have to go measure myself, and that's just how I function. And so, when I shot that email, somebody came back to me and she's like, an interior designer as well, but funny enough, she's moving down south. So she is going to be in Charlotte at the end of the month. So it was a great lead for her, and now I've left this client who was a return client of mine into good hands. Instead of trying to squeeze her, like when I spoke to her, I was like, I wish I could take this job on. Let me see what I can do. I spent the weekend thinking about it, and I was like, you know what? It would be a disservice to you if I try to squeeze you in right now because I can't give you the attention that you need. But I introduced her to a very talented interior designer who can do virtual and be on site with her. And so I think it's my mom used to always say, like, because she believes in, like, spirituality, she would say, like, whatever the life that you're in now and burdens that you have now, you'll take into the next life. So I think it was a way to kind of keep me in check, but it worked. So I always tried to not be a horrible person because it would take me to the next life. And so I also try to be a giving person because I think it will go into the next life too. She was smart.
Yeah, right. I love that you said that because, I think, and I have done it myself. There are times where you're just like, oh, I don't have the bandwidth. But it always happens when it's a former client. It's like, that's always the case. And then you're just like, I want a referral, or I want these, my former clients, but you're looking at you're looking at where you are. I mean, I have a client right now that they were like, well, we're okay with working over Christmas. And I'm like, well, we're not.
I'm not.
We want a break. And they were just very frustrated. And I was like, I understand you would like, your home and you would like this done, but it's November, 18th. Like, it's before Thanksgiving. You're basically asking us to work through the holidays, and I just can't do that. And so, it is hard sometimes saying no. And I don't know if you guys agree with me on this random sidebar, but I feel that clients, because they're home, are definitely a little bit more demanding than their usual demanding. So having to navigate that too, and the expectations, that, okay, well, I'm home, you're home, let's talk at 7 a.m, or let's talk I sent you this email at 1 o'clock because I'm wide awake watching Netflix, so I feel like all of this is like a shift in it. And I know for me, I'm definitely going to, the next 2 weeks, really work on kind of adjusting best practices, revising some contract terms, and doing things that I've seen that I never dealt with prior to the pandemic. But now you have customers home and they're watching every step, and they're sitting there and, just trying to make sure that we're working again efficiently, smarter, and just preparing for, what this looks like.
It's definitely not easy to say no to clients, but it's necessary. There's so many times where I've, had, I'm selling a piece and, they wanted to restore a certain way. And it's just like, I've spent, 5 years working as a restorer. So it's like, I have a pretty good idea of like, what it takes, but there's some things that, I just know are not possible. And, and just instead of just trying to make the sale and then something bad happening down the road, like it's good to, show self-control and be transparent. And I think, before COVID and after COVID, transparency and honesty has always been a key success for any business, especially when it comes to building, relationships with clients and that trust. But I think because of COVID, it's never been more heightened. And I think the difficult thing that, is changing is that we're having to build this trust, digitally, like we're not able to always have the client see the piece in person. We have to do, certain levels of certain photograph, we have to, take at least, sometimes 80 photos of one chair, just to make sure that that everything is fully transparent. If there's one nick on it, or if there's, it's an antique piece, so there's always like a little, loving care to it. But I think that is something that we've really improved on, is the technology trust factor of using technology and instilling that same exact trust that we would have when we can actually show the piece directly, when they come to our showroom or our warehouse. I mean, that's these little tools that we've been able to pick up, I think are, they're not there. It's just, I think that's the future, in a lot of ways as well. I think a lot of things have been kind of expedited, from COVID, with the reliance of, a lot of technology and certain things have definitely been kind of pushed up a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes a lot of good can come from a so-called disaster. And I certainly don't mean to be insensitive and say that COVID is not a disaster, because it certainly has been a lot of, thankfully, we personally don't have anybody that was affected health-wise, but there are plenty of people that have, plenty of people that have lost people, lost businesses, lost everything that they had. It's a very, very tough time for a lot of people. And I think that's where the empathy comes into play much more seriously than it has in the past. Also, a lot of times when people are, and kind of to go back to the original topic of starting a new business, certainly in a pandemic, I think a lot of people look for that excuse before they start their own business. Or they have a good job, I've got bills, I'll never be able to do it. Once they end up taking that leap, another quote, not mine, actually Jason Mraz's, leap and the net will appear. There are often times that I've seen when people do end up going off on their own, their biggest complaint or regret is not doing it sooner. And I wish I did that earlier. I wish I started sooner. And there's always an excuse to not do it. And some are completely legitimate. I've got 4 mouths to feed. I've got a mortgage. I can't possibly get rid of my income. Therefore, I'm going to stay in a job that I'm miserable at. Well, you don't necessarily have to make that choice. You can take that leap. There are funding mechanisms out there for startups, for new businesses. You are able to kind of trust in yourself, trust in the idea. And if COVID is kind of that push that a lot of people have needed in order to start, I just got laid off, I was furloughed, and in my time off, I started baking sourdough bread, and it's the best sourdough bread in the world, and now I'm going to start selling sourdough bread. Obviously, sourdough bread could be anything. It could be a widget. But this being kind of the excuse or the push to actually go ahead and try it, because at this, why not? At this point, what else do I have to lose? I was let go of my job. I didn't like my boss. My job is now making me commute back into the city. Well, what about my health? When the boss doesn't see you as a person and sees you as just kind of a cog, you may not want to be a part of that environment anymore. And that may be the excuse that you need, or the final push that you need to start. So, again, if you have the idea, if you have the financial, if you have the trust in yourself, this may actually be the perfect time to start your own business and to start something new.
Yeah, and I didn't fund the BEC, from the millions of clients that I got after COVID. But I did fund the BEC through the opportunity of having the small business loan that was available because of COVID. So with that loan and so forth, we were able to envelope the whole office and building with local makers and designers and so forth. So, and I also have to say that before this pandemic and before meeting Aaron, I had a little bit of like a money anxiety. So it was very difficult for me to invest in something to see it grow and feel like I would just look at my bank account and think like, oh yeah, and freak out. So know that when you start, it's okay to start slowly. I have 3 jobs, and so forth. And you let go of one, then you let go of the other, then this can pay for food on the table, and then it can pay for rent, and it can pay for whatever it is. But at some point, if you want to grow a little bit more than what you were before, you have to put money into it. You have to invest money into it. And that could be hiring your first employee, or taking an SBA loan, or getting a new warehouse for inventory, or whatever it is. But do it where it makes sense for you, of course. And
right.
then the other thing about like
spend money to make money.
You're full of quotes today.
Yeah, apparently I'm one big fortune cookie.
And then the other thing too is that the regrets aspect, I was always so hard on myself in the past. So like, why didn't I do this then? Or why can't I do this now? I'm not as good as blah, blah, blah. Well, and when you really look back and you've taken like what looks like a leap, it was actually like one stepping stone after another stepping stone after another stepping stone. And that's really how it takes you from point A to point B. It's not just like drop everything and take that leap. It's you have to have experiences that teach you to be able to take that next step.
And you are right on, because I think especially with social media, you know, we see these pages and these, you know, profiles, and they look perfect, right? And no one sees the times that, you know, you're like, oh my gosh, why am I still doing this? You know, or the times when you're just like, everything is going wrong on this project, everything. And it's making you question, you know, how did this happen? You know, so I think one of the big things is that, you know, if you do take the step and it doesn't work, that's okay too. Like I had to tell myself a few times before, you know, signing this lease that if it ended up being more costly than the investment than I made, then okay, then I learned. Then I took the chance and I said, this was an idea, and now what's the next idea? And I think sometimes that's really hard because we don't want to fail. We don't want to fail. We don't want to make a mistake. And now people are watching. It's like everybody's watching everything. And I think that it's okay to be honest and say, you know, this was scary. I had to take out a loan. You know, I didn't have clients for 2 months and I was like, oh my gosh, why did I do this? Or saying, okay, this has been a great decision and I am so fortunate, but I'm also prepared that I know that it's a shift and that things can evolve and you don't know what's going to happen with COVID. You don't know what's going to happen next year, but just taking a chance and just, you know, being okay with whatever happens in the end.
You know what's funny? Someone shared a quote with me the other day, and it said, "No one posts their failures." So that really resonated with me as you were speaking, and I try, and even so, like I when you think about social media, they do have like this perfect aesthetic, and sometimes like it makes you a little scared, a little intimidated. But I've been kind of blessed to, you know, really take the opportunity to kind of learn, really understand the market and really just take time with what I'm doing. I've set myself up in a position where I have like resources and mentors that can really help guide me so that way I don't become stuck. That's one of the things that I think was roadblocking me from really taking a leap of faith is, you know, what do I do if I stop or get stuck? But now I've put myself in a position where I know that I have resources around me and I have a new team of people who I can reach out to help guide me and to help ask these questions. So that way, you know, once again, it's all just about the collaboration and networking and just really just using those other small entities around you to help overcome those barriers.
You're so right. I mean, teamwork, you know, makes the dream work. If you want to add another quote there, you know, but one run place would have never happened if I didn't, you know, partner with, you know, my 3, you know, founders that I, you know, am working with. They, you know, it's like I have an idea, but to be able to, you know, just going back to our collaborating and working with people, you know, there's going to be people that are going to share your vision, you know, especially if it's a good idea, you know, and your passion. And if there's a way that you can work more with people, every business book that I've read about startups, it's, you know, building a team is the #1 chance of like succeeding. And like, and if you you can't do everything by yourself. And, you know I am tremendously blessed to have just an amazing team that I've been working with, building, you know, we're taking everything step by step, you know, day by day. But like, you know, you kind of look back at like where we first started from COVID to where we are now, and you can really see what progress is all about. But, you know, it not being so kind of overly concerned about the long-term goals, but really kind of taking everything one day at a time and really communicating and talking to everybody that you're working with is essential, you know, and I'm very, you know, lucky to have that.
Yeah, you need to have that long-term, you certainly need to have that long-term goal, but as we saw, anything can happen that can just completely derail that. So it's the short-term steps that you're taking and path that you're on to achieve that goal that then leads you to either a left or a right or going straight or making another decision. And there are no shortcuts, and there is no substitute for hard work. And I think, you know, especially today, we're all very, very It's very easy to get whatever you want in a minute. You know, if the memory doesn't serve right, who was that actor in that movie? You Google it, you find out in 2 seconds. If you want to order a random pound of coffee, you go on Amazon, it's sitting in your, you know, tomorrow you have it. A business doesn't work that way. And, you know, you can't force something. And if it takes 6 months to get the business up and running, if it takes time to get the customers going, if it takes time to hone your craft, you can't do that tomorrow in a week. And I think that the social media phenomenon kind of tricks us into thinking that things are easy. If it were easy, everybody would do it. And, you know, everything that we've talked about, you know, reiterating the teamwork and the camaraderie and a corporate culture and honesty and good business practices, you know, these are things that will be able to sustain you. And, you know, again, I think people are looking for that quick hit, you know, that quick, I'm going to start a company and then Google is going to come and buy it for $6 million and then I'm going to be done. Well, that may be your business model, that's fine. But if the other model is, I want this to be my career, and a career spans 30, 40 years, year 1 is as important as year 17. But you can't get to year 17 without going in successive order. So there, you know, again, there are no shortcuts, and you know, a down year is not necessarily a bad year.
And you know what, Katie, you said something too, and Aaron, you listed them all, but mentorship is huge. And it doesn't even have to be a mentor in your field. You know, I have design mentors, but I also have business mentors that are in completely different, almost like how the Beck is. You have your accounting and you have the design aspect. So, you know, I have business mentors that, you know, I talk to that they don't know the ins and out of what we do from a design standpoint, but they're very business savvy that I can talk through, you know, how would you handle this? You know, if this happened in your firm. And I think that's important too, because it helps to, if you're lucky enough, Katie, and I know everybody probably is, you know, you have your people that are your cheerleaders and they're like, oh my God, you're the best, you're the best, you're the best. But it's sometimes nice to have people that have no idea whether, you know, they have no point of reference. They're like, all right, yeah, it looks good, but they're looking at it from what are your goals? Okay, what's your business plan? This doesn't really sound right to me, but, you know, help me to understand it because I don't know your industry. So I think that even needs to get added. And this is the time that if you don't have a mentor, you know, talk to someone. It's a great time of the year. I love knowing like, okay, it's the start of a new year. Let's try to figure out things that we can, you know, do, just change and adjust. So just mentorship was huge. So I think that was great that you pointed that out.
Before Andrew speaks, I just want to say one thing. There are people out there who have their children at home but still need to work part-time. And so if you find that your business is doing well, but you don't want to have somebody hired full-time, it's a really good opportunity to get like really experienced people to work with you. You know, I have 2 part-timers right now and I am indebted to them. Like I just adore them. One is totally not from this industry, whatever, at all. And she gives me like great, you know, business insight. You know, we've redrafted our proposals, we've redrafted our contracts and so forth together. And I have team meetings with her and the architect, the in-house architect as well, because she brings the construction side into my business. So where your strengths may not be, if you can bring those people into your team, and if you can't bring them full-time, this is a good opportunity right now to bring them here part-time and virtually, because there are people who are extremely talented who need work.
Well, I wanted to say thank you all very much for a robust and knowledgeable conversation. We have a few minutes left. If there are any attendees that want to ask a general question or a specific question to one of the panelists. And maybe everyone wants to say a closing statement and then we can conclude. All right, no questions. Although Jamila Godfrey wanted to say thank you to everyone and a special shout out to Andrea because she's such an inspiration. Okay, does anyone want to have any closing statements? Thank you very much, everyone, for participating and attending.
Thank you.